Daryl Brougham had more than 30 placements when he was a foster child. He wrote about his life in a book called Through the Eyes of a Foster Child. He now has a social work degree and is also a former child, youth and family employee. Daryl was at Social Development Minister Anne Tolley's speech this morning in Wellington when all of this was announced, but is sitting beside me in the Auckland studio now. Daryl, welcome. You lived in foster care from the age of 3 months to the age of 18.
Yep.
Over 30 placements, 20 social workers, 27 schools.
Yep.
How do you survive an experience like that intact if things are as bad as Anne Tolley says?
I think for me, the uniqueness about me was that I just hoped that the next placement was better than the last. But I think when you move so many times, I was moved close to about 79. And I never really had time to reflect on what's actually going on, or it just happens so fast. So
you're about as vulnerable as you can be.
Totally,
aren't you?
totally.
When you're a child going from home to home to home to home.
Yeah.
And so you need the agency to look after you.
Yes.
Anne Tolley said today, why did you go down to Anne Tolley's speech in Wellington? Were you invited?
I was invited, yes. I got the email from MSD Events to go down. I thought, what a great opportunity.
And so you're regarded now as an expert in the field of foster care, right? But
Totally.
both because you have a tertiary qualification
Yes.
and also because you lived it. You lived the reality of it.
Yeah, and the book, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you went down. What did you think of what she said? What do you think of what the minister announced today?
I have been through 18 reviews, and half of those I've lived, and the other half I've experienced while study, while everything else. I was in there and I was hoping for the best, and I walked out angry.
So if you were hoping for the best, what would the best have been?
The best would have been every child who's in state care has that support right up to 21. And then if need be, 25. But she said, no, it's going to 18 and some will go to 21. And when I heard that some, I kept thinking, who's going to be that person to decide the some? You know, for me, any child that's been taken from a family and placed in a foster home is already a traumatic event, and they should get support right up to their 21. Right up to their 21. So I was quite angry. And also my biggest thing I got angry about was 5 years. John, I was found by a rubbish bin at 3 months old. I had been shifted to America. I had been psychologically, mentally, physically, sexually abused. At the age of 5, I was found to be underweight, undernourished, and all proven in the first 5 years of my life. Anne Tolley today is saying they want this to roll out within the 5 years. I'm sorry, children can't wait that long. And it makes me so angry that they think 5 years is okay.
Anne Tolley said, and I quote, that they want to create the framework for a new operating model to support our vulnerable children and young people. Now, you were a vulnerable child as a young person.
Yeah.
Are you saying that the system doesn't need fixing as it currently stands?
The system needs to definitely go back to child-centred. Where I've been hitting my head against a brick wall, John, is that the system does not understand the impacts of state care. And tertiary levels don't teach the impacts of state care. I've been through the tertiary, learned nothing about foster care. I went into child, youth and family under their training package and learned nothing about state care.
I can absolutely see that no one is better equipped to talk about that than you,
totally.
because you've lived it and you've studied it. But in a way, isn't that Anne Tolley's point? I mean, she talks somewhere, I've got her speech here, and she talks about, look, I've got it here, less than 25% of SIF staff work directly with children in need of care and protection.
Yes.
In other words, aren't you agreeing with each other?
To a certain point, but on that aspect, they're not working with the children. I've been a SIFS worker because we're too busy there doing assessments. But with assessments come knowledge, and if you don't have the knowledge of impacts of state care, how on earth can you do an assessment? So these guys are probably sitting there longer trying to think, okay, how do I make sense of this? The impacts of state care I'm talking about is trust, identity, belongingness and property.
Can we back up the truck? When the review was announced, Paula Rebstock came in and all, did you have faith? Did you think yes? Or were you always nervous about this?
I was nervous until I got a phone call from the ministry and they asked me to meet with a man called Duncan Dunlop in December. Now, those who don't know Duncan Dunlop, he actually worked under Paula Rebstock. So Paula Rebstock was $2,000 or $3,000 a day. Duncan Dunlop was $2,000 a day. He was flown over from Scotland, and he runs a company called Who Cares.
And so they sought you out. They sought out your opinion.
Yep.
And what did you say to them? What did you say to Duncan Dunlop?
I said to Duncan that it frustrates me that the system in itself, the tertiary right through, do not understand the impacts of state care. How on earth can they do assessments? And he said to me, Daryl, I run advocacy, and the only reason why it works is because it's run by ex-foster children. They know the signposts better than anyone. I heard her talk about the advocacy today, and I was really excited, but it got stopped there. There was no other mention about it. It was, here's an advocacy, but we're going to address it later. For me, if they're going to do the advocacy, they must have it run by ex-foster children, not a youth panel. Not a youth panel. It's got to be done by people who have actually lived it, come out, experienced what it's like to come right through it.
Let's go back to what Antoli said. Quite simply, the current system is not delivering effectively for vulnerable children and young people.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Okay, so that's the current system.
Yes.
So changes are required.
Yep.
It's not allowing our social workers to do their job, which should be spending most of their time supporting vulnerable children and families. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, so you both agree with the starting point.
Yes.
What's the difference about the solution?
The solution for me is that my book talks about the impacts of state care, and I keep stressing to people, if you're going to send a child into a home, you've got to understand that that child comes with trust issues. That child has identity, but instead the adult world goes, he's Māori. Then you've got belongingness. That child's thinking, do I belong here? Keep it in mind that every time that we move that child, they're going to a new school.
What was it like being moved all the times you were moved?
Horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
And did you think it was a rejection? So when you went out of a family home, did you think that was... So that felt like a rejection of you every time?
To a point. Sometimes I just couldn't wait to get out of there because of the abuse, but I just hoped that the next place was better.
And when you went to a place that was halfway decent?
I hoped that I stayed there.
And when you didn't stay?
I had to sometimes stomach it. And I had to put a brave face on, because that's a survival technique that we learn. And it's so sad because we take that into adult life as well.
But look at you now, man.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky. I'm not lucky because I achieved that.
You made it.
I made it happen.
What's your book called? Through the Eyes of a Foster Child.
Through the Eyes of a Foster Child.
Daryl Brougham, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate your time and
Awesome.
for your take from the inside as a child who's lived it and the outside as a tertiary qualified expert. We really appreciate your time, Daryl.
Thank you so much.